What's going on, Dolphin fans? It is your boy Dillon, and I got a few things I want to talk about today. Well, 3 articles that I want to go through, try and go through them as quick as we can. Actually getting through the articles, but there's some information that I want to talk about, including one of them is discussing a potential approach to the offseason and free agency in particular that the Dolphins might take. A little bit on Ryan Fitzpatrick's future, and also Devon Godshaw is making headlines for a reason that hopefully is not true. So let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about is this report on Dolphins Wire from Kyle Krabs, who, as you guys know, is a writer that I very often disagree with, but I like to give you, different perspectives, and sometimes I agree with him. So let's see what he has to say here. One in Dolphins upper management supports active free agency. Now, real quick, before I get into this, I'm just going to give you my perspective on this. I personally don't like being, super active in free agency. I don't think that's the way that you build your team. I think you're supposed to supplement through free agency. I don't like being big spenders. I don't like chasing big names. I don't like doing any of that. I think that last offseason, they did that, obviously, and they barreled through their cap space. Real quick, I just want to mention this because we will talk about it a little bit more throughout, but they have like 25 to 30 million, something like that, of cap space going in. And it's true that actually happens to be in the top 10 in the league. However, that's really not actually all that much, especially since the cap space is actually expected to be going down overall the next few years. So it's actually not that much in reality. But additionally to that, people want to praise them, though, for being in the top 10 in the league for, available cap space. But they're not. And I mean, I don't know how people can't see it coming, but it is eventually going to come. There will be a time where they are going to have, and it's going to come actually very soon, sooner rather than later, where they're going to have to make tough decisions because their cap situation is going to give them hell and put them in position to have to make tough choices. Anyway, so I don't like that. I think that while the Dolphins did technically improve in a lot of ways, most importantly, I guess, in their overall record, and certainly the defense stepped it up, I don't think that that is going to continue. I don't think that the defense is really that good. They certainly showed some flashes and whatever, but I do think that a lot of the other contextual information and data from the season helped to inflate that a little bit. Also, if we were to lose somebody like Xavier Howard, that would have massive impact on our defense, and we would definitely have a big drop-off. But anyway, let's go ahead and get to this. To spend or not to spend? That is ultimately the question, and while the temptation to embrace another spending spree lingers for a Dolphins team that may feel like they're close to a big breakthrough, I mean, a lot of people think that. I don't think that. They have a long way to go before they can prove that to me, or really anybody, or really even just reality, because, they didn't make it to the playoffs. I know, quick side note, they didn't make it to the playoffs, even though they were 10-6, and they did have, twice as many wins this season as last year. But if they want to get to where they want to be, which is consistently winning, consistently having a winning record, so 9+ wins, also consistently getting to and making it to the playoffs, they couldn't do it even with the expanded playoff field and having that many wins, et cetera, et cetera. So, are they really close to that big breakthrough? A lot of people think so. I don't, and that's part of the reason why nobody watches my channel. But we'll see who ends up being right in the long run. So far, they've proven me very much correct on the vast majority of my projections and, so on and so forth for the course in which they've decided to take. Let's see. So it seems as though the final marching orders on how this team will attack the 2021 offseason is up in the air. But according to the latest report, which comes from Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald, it seems as though there's been some sort of push from inside Miami's deliberations to spend big once again. Jackson's report dropped last night with this fascinating behind the curtain nugget. Now, one more quick pause. So obviously, I don't want them to be, but I fully expect them to be, because that's kind of Stephen Ross's MO. That's what he does. He thinks he can just throw resources at it and that's going to get the job done, which is not the case. It's never been the case, and it's not going to be the case, and that's a major reason why I think that it's going to ultimately fail. Especially because I think he's prone to taking risks that are way too big and silly, and thinks that it's just the money that's going to fucking solve it, and chasing, like, you know, big name superstars. And so I don't know if it's going to happen, but I do think that there is a high probability that the Dolphins end up trading the farm for Deshaun Watson, in which case they would have to fucking, you know, take his big ass contract, and that's going to destroy the cap space. I mean, look, in another year or two, they are going to be in cap hell. Or they're going to have to, you know, very much cut, you know, large, well, not necessarily a large portion of the team, but certainly the high paid players, right? And unfortunately, those, you know, at least a handful of those guys are your main contributors right now. So, yeah, there's problems one way or the other that can arise from it. Either they're going to not be able to pay people, or they're not going to be able to keep people, which is the same thing. And it's going to happen sooner rather than later. So anyway, this is what he had to say, though. We hear there has been discussion inside the Dolphins about whether to clear out a lot of cap space and be very aggressive again in free agency. I mean, at least one person in the Dolphins' upper brass supports another spending spree, but a decision must still be made. That was from Barry Jackson. First and foremost, decoding who among Miami's upper management is the champion of an aggressive offseason is an impossible chore. I guess. My guess is that it's coming from Stephen Ross. Because as far as I'm concerned, Chris Greer and Flores are really just pawns. They're just his little puppets and do everything that he says. And really, honestly, I'm not sure that Chris Greer is really that kind of guy. I think that anytime he's made those big moves is at the behest of, you know, the owner or somebody above him, but I don't know. It is difficult to say for sure. My guess is it's coming from Stephen Ross. But someone amid Miami's high-ranking officials apparently thinks another big spend is in order. Such an offseason with a spending spree involved would push Miami back into familiar waters as a team, and that's a dangerous game that we thought the Dolphins would be willing to put behind them. The Dolphins of the 2010s were constantly spending big and throwing money at the roster, but cap issues and lack of consistent success retaining their top talents and building an offensive line put a glass ceiling over the team. And that's very likely to happen again, and in fact is likely to happen again, like I said, in the next year or two, especially because of the cap going down. A second consecutive high-spend offseason of free agency would have Miami teetering on the brink of falling back into such conditions once more unless they knock their NFL draft selections out of the park and see their 2020 rookie class take significant steps forward in year two. Quick pause there. They're already in that caps. Because look, last offseason, and I think I might have forgot to mention this, they went into last offseason with like at least $100+ million, okay? I think it was actually somewhere more around 150 million. Okay, they blew through 100 million in cap space in one offseason, essentially. That's ridiculous. They went from over 100 million in cap space because of how much they cleared out to having 25 million. So yeah, okay, maybe right now they're in the top 10, blah, blah, blah. But I'm telling you, they're going to have massive fucking problems. And then as far as their draft classes go, you guys know how I feel about that. They've been pretty bad so far, especially considering the fact that they've already cut 3 players from those first 2. And could very well likely end up getting rid of, trading, or whatever, the first round quarterback that they just took. Which would, I mean, unfortunately, because of the extremely high risk / extremely high reward path that they have taken, which is unquestionably the path that they have taken, and why I don't agree with it and never did, and have said the entire time that it's way too much of a risk. But with that path that they have taken, you know, unfortunately, right now they are in a situation where it's almost just lose-lose, because almost nothing they do is going to be adequate enough, because at some point it's going to, because they've just swung the pendulum way too far, and the momentum is just, and it's too crazy and chaotic. But we'll see how it plays out. Perhaps the Dolphins feel better perhaps the Dolphins feel between the 2020 and 2021 NFL drafts. Let's note, though, interestingly, he didn't mention the 2019 draft class, which has been like absolute garbage to this point. Like, the only one that's even really relevant is Christian Wilkins, pretty much. Andrew Van Ginkel, I guess. Other than that, not really. Myles Gaskin had some stuff, but then got injured, right? But, like, they're struggling. He didn't even bring them up because that, their 2019 class has to fucking step it up, too. And they've just been terrible at evaluating. Terrible. Both coaches and players, as a matter of fact. Anyway, the heavy lifting on breaking the trend is already done. Or perhaps they will indeed show restraint with their offseason plan. But whatever direction the Dolphins do, I'm sure, feel, the organization, I'm sure, feels that between the 2020 and 2021 NFL drafts that the heavy lifting is done. But they are so far from that being a reality. Because they're not even doing their drafts right. Their drafts have been pretty fucking terrible to this point. Just objectively speaking. They haven't been good. But anyway, whatever direction they choose to take will become apparent to everyone in the next few weeks, as the Dolphins and the rest of the league will open free agency in the middle of March. So that is very true. And again, we will have to wait and see how it plays out. Obviously, as things start to take off and the more happens, the more news comes out, the more obviously we will be discussing. So let's see. The next thing that I did want to talk about, though, is Ryan Fitzpatrick, because there is a substantial possibility that he does not end up staying with the team, which, again, look, at the beginning, I wouldn't have gotten rid of Ryan Tannehill. I would have done the drafts way differently. I would have had Will Grier to bring up behind Ryan Tannehill, blah, 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 whatever. But, like, I wouldn't have brought in, Josh Rosen, all these different things. But, like, at this point, and I had to admit that Fitzpatrick is, better than I expected, in large part because of his leadership abilities, right? And just his energy out there. Anyway, and I told you too, that benching him the way that they did in the middle of the year for no reason, that was going to cause problems. Anyway, so, like, I like him, and I would rather have Ryan Tannehill, if I'm being honest, being the mentor for our young quarterbacks, but Ryan Fitzpatrick is great. And I'm perfectly fine with him being there. So if they lose him, that is a massive loss to the team overall, but also would be a considerable loss to whoever the young quarterback is, whether that ends up being Tua next year or Deshaun Watson or whoever, or they draft another guy, whatever. Excuse me. So, it's that's something to keep an eye on as well. But real quick, let's get into a little bit of that, because there is some information on that. A clue emerges on Ryan Fitzpatrick's next possible move. This also comes from Kyle Krabs. The start of the free agency window isn't for another 2 weeks. The legal tampering period comes on Monday, the 15th of March, 2 days ahead of the former open of free agency in the league calendar year on the 17th. But that apparently hasn't stopped at least one team from reaching out and talking to free agent quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick, who has been mulling over his future in the league after a 2-year stint in Miami that saw him provide plenty of magic for the Dolphins along the way. There was some heartbreak too, but generally speaking, the Fitzpatrick tenure in Miami should be considered a rousing success, as he helped to reignite the Dolphins' successes and the transition from a downtrodden franchise to one brimming with hope. First off, I don't know that you really can say that. That is very, very optimistic, because in his first year, they tanked, which, is just shitty all the fucking way around. He was one of the very, very few bright spots. He was doing great for them, and then they just shit all over his face this past year because they're fucking morons and they don't know what the fuck they're doing. And, he even said it was heartbreaking for him. It left a bad taste in his mouth. And there have been reports that he wants to start next year. So but he still wants to play, but he wants to start, at least compete for a starting role, which he is very unlikely to do in Miami at this point. So unfortunately, there is a substantial probability that Ryan Fitzpatrick does leave. Which I think overall would end up hurting the team. Although cap space will open up, and that will, give them their opportunity to be big spenders in free agency and possibly even bring in Deshaun Watson and blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden now we're Super Bowl contenders. Even though, last year was proof that a quarterback isn't everything, and certainly he's not, because his team last year went 4-12. Anyway, and then not to mention the myriad other reasons of why that philosophy is just stupid and doesn't really actually even have success. Anyway, and then whether or not they've actually turned things around, that is still not even close to a guarantee. They had a much better than expected season this past year, but that was very much in large part due to the extenuating circumstances of the season altogether. Anyway, perhaps his next move is easy enough to predict in that he'll have the chance to provide more of the same to someone else. And one team who has reportedly reached out, the Denver Broncos, need exactly that. Woody Page of the Denver Gazette has reported that the Broncos team has spoken to the veteran quarterback. How this is possible to have done without breaking league policies about the legal tampering window versus extracurricular activity is unclear, but Denver would certainly be a great destination for Fitzpatrick's experienced hand to make an impact. Whatever, dude. I don't care about that. I don't know why he's even bothering to mention it more than just the once, just for informational purposes. I feel like he's mentioning it because like, if it happens, he's going to want some sort of, penalty so the Dolphins can get, I don't know, like it's so they can keep Fitzpatrick or something. I don't know. Anyway, whatever. I'm speculating and projecting things that are probably non-existent, so whatever. Onto the writer, because I don't know that that's the case. The Broncos have plenty of talent, but young quarterback Drew Lock appears to be a potential stumbling block to the team's long-term outlook. And while Fitzpatrick wouldn't fix the team's long-term issue, he would provide a potential boost in play for a Broncos team that needs a spark. Fitzpatrick has proven time and time again that sparks are his specialty, so when the league year opens in March, look for Fitzpatrick to be on the move to a place that needs a little extra juice. Denver might be the ticket, and thanks to Page's subtle hint, that may be exactly where we see him land, which again I think would be a disaster for the team overall, especially if they then end up using that free cap space to do something like, go chase down Watson. Anyway, the final thing that I do want to mention, though, is another report. This one comes from Dolphin Nation about Devon Godshaw. Devon Godshaw resigned to reality that NFL future likely isn't with the Miami Dolphins, which is a disaster because he's definitely one of the better players on our team, definitely one of the better defensive linemen we have, and that was definitely the trouble spot for the entire defense last year, and certainly for, the defense in general. He was another one of those great carryovers from the Gase regime because of how great those Gase draft picks were and those Gase drafts were in general, but unfortunately he might be a guy that has to be a cap casualty, and likely because of their cap issues already. But let's get into this. As defensive lineman, Devon Godshaw pursues a lucrative long-term contract because he's coming up on that time, right? He's coming to the realization that any such deal will likely not be with the Miami Dolphins. Adam H. Beasley of the Miami Herald noted that the rapid development of Raekwon Davis, coupled with the fact that Godshaw is coming off a season-ending arm injury, has made Godshaw's future with the Dolphins tenuous, and also because of their cap situation. But those are factors for sure. And although I think if they were to get rid of him in part because of Raekwon Davis's rapid ascension or whatever, I think that would be a very naive and foolish thing to do. Even if you take out the context that I think of, they didn't really actually do as good as it seems and are farther from the dominant play, the dominant potential than what a lot of people believe. I just think it would be all around stupid to get rid of him, but they might not have a choice. But if they say that, anyway, yeah. So anyway, so we'll see how that goes. Let's see. He has conveyed to multiple associates that he does not expect the Dolphins will offer him what he believes his value is. That means he will likely test the market when free agency begins in 3 weeks. At this point, Godchaux seems likely to move on, but in theory, he could return if he is unable to land a significant deal elsewhere. But I can almost guarantee that one of the other 31 teams will give him a contract that he likes. If the Dolphins are unwilling. In both 2018 and 2019, Godchaux started all 16 games for the Dolphins and appeared to be developing into an effective player. However, in the Dolphins' 5th game last season, he went down with an injury and missed the rest of the season. I mean, that's football, for one. 2, it happened to also be in the middle of one of the most injury-riddled seasons that ever existed, because the NFL thought it necessary to pursue a season, even though they couldn't have a proper offseason, blah, 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 blah. They couldn't stay in proper football shape, and that was a large reason why there were so many injuries. So, I mean, it's not really... a lot of it is not his fault, right? The vast majority of it is not his fault. Uncontrollable. It is what it is. And he's still young. I'm sure a team will fucking be willing to pay him if the Dolphins aren't. In each of the last 2 drafts, the Dolphins have selected defensive linemen to challenge the 26-year-old Godchaux, with Christian Wilkins being chosen in the first round in 2019 and Davis last season. I think Godchaux is still the better of the 3 as of right now. I will say Raekwon Davis's size is appealing and has some intrigue to it, but you know, I mean, he definitely still has quite a ways to go and really needs some help from the rest of that defensive line, particularly his pass rushers on the edge. Exactly where Godchaux ends up remains unknown, but it appears likely that when the 2021 season arrives, he won't be wearing a Dolphins jersey, which again would be a very, very sad thing to see and would hurt the Dolphins team overall. So anyway, that's what I got for you guys. I just wanted to give you that little bit of information and news and speculation, rumors, talk, whatever, and just discuss it because, you know, those are some things that are coming up soon with free agency and some things that could be very impactful for this Dolphins team, you know, potentially negatively depending on how it all turns out. All right. Anyway, so, well, real quick, before I do my sign off, just to wrap, I think that it would be a disaster if they were to... I think that it would be a downgrade for the team overall to get rid of Fitzpatrick and Devon Godshaw. But they would be doing so in large part for cap reasons. And then if they did get rid of those guys and clear cap space, it would be terrible, in my opinion, and a bad decision if they were then subsequently, you know... compelled to be big spenders in free agency again. So we'll see how it plays out. I think that approach has a high likelihood, but you know, a couple weeks away, and so we will see. All right, with that, I'm gonna get out of here. I hope you guys appreciate my perspectives. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comments section. Of course, as always, follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Phins up.